Welcome to your Newsmax Daily for Wednesday, January 15th, 2025, National Hat Day, and on the food calendar, National Bagel Day. Butter or cream cheese? It's the third Wednesday of the new year. Half of the month is over already, and all the Christmas credit card bills are now coming due, right? The first day of the year was a Wednesday. 3 weeks ago. Remember when I said, 3 Wednesdays ago. Remember when I said the first 3 days of the year would be Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. W, T, and F. So far, that about sums it up, right? Capitol Hill confirmations, California fires. There's a new one in Ventura County. Thousands of people could be evacuated today. Cuba, a possible ceasefire and release of hostages in the Middle East. Those are the big headlines. Plus, President Biden is expected to address the nation from the Oval Office for the final time tonight. Some folks are happy about that. The last time that Biden addressed the nation from behind the Resolute desk was when he announced his decision to step down from the 2024 presidential campaign. Maybe the same people, the powers that be that convinced him to step down, can convince him to do nothing else for the next 5 days. Stay in the White House and eat ice cream. Yesterday, Biden said he's lifting Cuba from the U.S. list of state sponsors of terrorism and easing economic sanctions as part of a deal for the release of political prisoners, a deal brokered in part by the Catholic Church, according to the White House. Senator Marco Rubio, that's Trump's pick for Secretary of State, whose family fled communist Cuba, supports stiff sanctions on Havana. So does Texas Senator Ted Cruz, whose father was tortured in Cuba before fleeing to America. Some Democrats, especially in Florida, are even against it. Nikki Fried is the chair of Florida's Democratic Party. She said she was, quote, disappointed in Biden's plan. You can read all about that at Newsmax.com. In Washington today, former Florida Attorney General and former Trump advisor Pam Bondi, Trump's pick for Attorney General, is the one being questioned in her Senate hearing. She'll be asked about pursuing revenge on President Trump's political enemies as Attorney General and supporting Trump's fight to investigate the 2020 election, among other things. Pete Hegseth's hearing for Secretary of Defense yesterday was exactly what you thought it would be.
You acknowledge that you cheated on your wife and that you cheated on the woman by whom you had just fathered a child. You have admitted that.
I think there's a lot of concern about this nomination, and there should be. This man is not unqualified. He is disqualified.
Current DoD policy allows service members and eligible dependents to be reimbursed for travel associated with non-covered reproductive health care, including abortions. Will you maintain this common sense policy?
Democrats Tim Kaine, Elizabeth Warren, and Mazie Hirono. Former Navy SEAL and combat veteran Carl Higbie starts us off.
This hearing today was for the Secretary of Defense, not the Secretary of Feel Good or the Secretary of Diversity or the Secretary of Equity. This hearing today was for a position about winning wars. This is about who is going to oversee our nuclear stockpiles, thousands of fighter jets, and 2 million people trained to shoot bad guys. Who might decide whether or not we launch a drone strike that eliminates someone's entire family tree on this planet? Real decisions in a real world against real people who want to kill us. But you would think Democrats were like interviewing the future HOA president or their daughter's therapist or something stupid. Most of the Democrats' dissent was about an affair or alcohol or has he ever overseen enough people, and that he was not qualified.
Mr. Hegseth, I do not believe that you are qualified to meet the overwhelming demands of this job.
So what are the qualifications to be SecDef? Lloyd Austin had all the qualifications the Democrats are alluding to. And what happened? As a general, he wrote the withdrawal plan for Iraq that created ISIS. Then, a few years later, 97 senators voted to confirm him as the Secretary of Defense. And what happened there? Oh, right. He messed up the Afghanistan withdrawal. The Democrats were not being serious. They were focused on personal attacks. So Senator Mark Wayne Mullen said what needed to be said.
In general, the U.S. Secretary of Defense position is filled by a civilian. That's it. And yet your own secretary that you all voted for, Secretary of Austin, we had to vote on a waiver because he stepped off the board of Raytheon. Senator from Virginia starts bringing up the fact that what if you showed up drunk to your job? How many senators have showed up drunk to vote at night? And don't tell me you haven't seen it, because I know you have. And then how many senators do you know have got a divorce before cheating on their wives?
Any senator want to answer that? No? I thought not. But you'll continue to throw stones from your glass houses. You know what the number one thing that almost every Democrat was concerned with today? His stance on women in combat.
I have many concerns about your record, and particularly your public statements, because they are so hurtful to the men and women who are currently serving in the U.S. military, harmful to morale, harmful to good order and discipline.
Oh, they're hurtful. This shows me that you, Senator, fundamentally do not understand the mission of the Pentagon. I don't care about your feelings. You know what is hurtful? Kids growing up without a father because someone couldn't carry them off the battlefield because people like you were more concerned about the color of someone's skin or their gender or some other diversity quota to make you feel good in your nice, warm Democrat office. Real quick, Gillibrand, if you're taken hostage, do you want people like me coming to get you, or do you want the super diverse female fire chief from L.A. that can't put out fires? And if you say you want her, you are lying. I happen to agree that I don't think women in combat is a fantastic idea. I'm sorry, and that I'm not sorry. And I would venture to say that most women don't want to be in combat also. I know this because no women I have ever spoken to has ever said, yeah, like sign me up for combat. But you know what else I know? Because I've been in combat, that I don't want somebody who has lower standards fighting next to me.
What is true is that the weight of the ruck on your back doesn't change. The weight of the 155 round that you have to carry doesn't change. The weight of the 240 Bravo machine gun you might have to carry doesn't change. And so whether it's a man or a woman, they have to meet the same high standards.
Yes. And if you think he's wrong, if you think women currently have equal standards and would perform equally in combat, then you explain to me why this is the U.S. Army physical standards. Why are they different between men and women? As a female or as a male, I need to do 73 push-ups for my age group to have a perfect score. But as a female, I only need to do 40. So, senators, if women are equal and can do equal things, why aren't there equal standards? That's what Pete is talking about here. And you guys have totally missed the point. Yes, it was a woman who found Osama bin Laden. And you know what she didn't do? She didn't actually get on that op that slapped an ECT charge on his door and then shot him in the face. Why? Well, here's a reason. They opened Navy SEAL pipelines to women. You know how many women made it through? 0. Because women are not physically equal. I'm not knocking women. That's just a fact. You guys can't even decide gender on your own. How many women are linemen in the NFL? Like, what is it, less than, firefighters, 10% of firefighters are women, male powerlifters. They deadlift on average more than 100% more than women. Why are Democrats constantly pushing these arbitrary standards when diversity is not our best qualification, but rather achievement is? This is exactly why Trump won and why he nominated Pete Hegseth, because he understands this.
Newsmax host Carl Higbie. Hegseth explains the standards during questioning from Arkansas Senator Tom Cotton, who served in the U.S. Army.
Mr. Hegseth, let's continue on this line of questioning about what's sometimes referred to as women in combat. I think that phrase is something of a misnomer. Many members of this committee have served in combat in the last 25 years, to include women and men. I'm sure all those men served with women, whether they were military police officers or they were pilots or whether they were intelligence analysts or medics or what have you. You served. I assume you served with women who were on the front lines as well. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And were those women anything other than skilled, brave, and honorable in their service?
They were some of the best soldiers I worked with, Senator.
So women have been serving in combat for a long time. Women have even been serving in combat units like infantry battalions for a long time in roles like medics or mechanics or what have you. So what we're talking about here specifically is women in ground combat roles in jobs like infantrymen or artillerymen or special forces. Now, until about 10 years ago, that wasn't the case. Under Secretary Panetta, those roles were opened up to women to serve in. Has President Trump indicated at all that he plans to rescind or alter that guidance?
You're correct to point out, Senator, that these are the decisions that the Commander-in-Chief will have the prerogative to make. He has not indicated to me that he has plans to change whether or not women would have access to these roles. However, I would point out, ensuring that standards are equal and high is of importance to him and great importance to me. Because in those ground combat roles, what is true is that the weight of the ruck on your back doesn't change. The weight of the 155 round that you have to carry doesn't change. The weight of the 240 Bravo machine gun you might have to carry doesn't change. And so whether it's a man or a woman, they have to meet the same high standards. And Senator, in any place where those things have been eroded or in courses, criteria have been changed in order to meet quotas, racial quotas or gender quotas, that is putting a focus on something other than readiness, standards, meritocracy, and lethality. So that's the kind of review I'm talking about, not whether women have access to ground combat.
Okay, so thank you. So you expect no change to that guidance, but as you point out, in these specific jobs, there are irreducible physical demands. We expect our intelligence analysts and our mechanics to be physically fit in the military, but it's different when you're in the infantry or the artillery. You just mentioned a few things. Let me point it out. An artillery shell weighs almost 100 pounds. An Abrams tank round weighs around 50 pounds. The M240 Bravo machine gun with its tripod weighs almost 50 pounds. The average weight of a full kit, ammo, water, commo, body armor for a soldier is over 100 pounds. Nothing you can do can change any of those things, right? That is physical reality.
Go ahead. Yes, Senator. And I would say the requirements to handle those things in a ground combat unit, as far as standards, can look different than those of a medic or a drone pilot. And so it's not that it has to be the same standard throughout. It's standards to maximize efficacy of that particular position.
So he is talking about women in combat specifically, which most of us knew all along, right? And how well-versed or qualified is Hegseth really? Listen to this.
What is the diameter of the rifle round fired out of an M4A1 rifle?
That's a 5.56.
How many push-ups can you do?
I did 5 sets of 47 this morning.
What do you think are most important strategic bases in the Pacific?
In the Pacific, Guam is pretty strategically significant.
How many rounds of 5.56 can you fit into the magazine of an M4 rifle?
Depends on the magazine, but standard issue is 30, Senator.
And what size round does the M9 Beretta standard issue sidearm for the military fire?
A 9mm, Senator.
What kind of batteries do you put in your night vision goggle?
Duracell.
So right there, you're representing qualifications that show you understand what the warfighter deals with every single day on the battlefield. You understand what happens on the front line, where our troops will be. And what happens, unfortunately, in this country is decisions made in rooms like this, bad decisions, end up in dead 17, 18, 19-year-old Americans. And those Americans rarely come from families that sit in rooms like this. They come from lower, middle-income families who sometimes the military is their only way out. And they join because maybe they want to go to college. Maybe they had no other choice. Maybe they love this country. But for whatever reason, they joined and they sat on the dotted line. And when people like us screw up, they don't come home.
Montana Republican Senator Tim Sheehy, a former Navy SEAL who said Hegseth has his vote. Iowa Senator Joni Ernst, the lone Republican holdout, also said she now supports Hegseth. This was one of the many highlights. This is Senator Elizabeth Warren, who really held Pete to the fire on previous comments about women in the military.
Now, Mr. Hegseth, you have written that after they retire, generals should be banned from working for the defense industry for 10 years. You and I agree on the corrosive effects of the revolving door between the Pentagon and defense contractors. It's something I would have liked to talk with you about if you'd come and been willing to visit with me. But the question I have for you on this is, will you put your money where your mouth is and agree that when you leave this job, you will not work for the defense industry for 10 years?
Senator, it's not even a question I've thought about because
You can
it's
think
not
about it
one
right
that-
now.
It's not one, my motivation for this job
I understand
has never
that. I
been
just
about
need
what
a
could
yes or no
conceivably
here.
come next.
Time is short. I just need a yes or no.
I would consult with the president about what the policy should be
In
at the Defense
other
Department.
words, you're quite sure that every general who serves should not go directly into the defense industry for 10 years. But you're not willing to make that same pledge?
I'm not a general, Senator.
And on that note, let's go to last night's edition of Finnerty.
I think we had this expectation, I know I did, that Democrats, with 6 weeks to prepare for this, were really going to try to get Pete Hegseth today. But then I thought about the Democrats that were in the room today: Elizabeth Warren, Richard Blumenthal, Mazie Hirono, Tim Kaine. Remember him? Ran with Hillary Clinton, right? Just like Tim Walz, already a trivia question. And I realized how sad the Democrat Party is. They really embarrassed themselves today. Elizabeth Warren has lied for her entire life about being Native American. She's not. She's 1/64th Cherokee at best, meaning she's more closely related to the Jeep Grand Cherokee than the tribe. But according to her hometown paper, the Boston Globe, Lizzie apparently referred to herself as a minority in the directory for the Association of American Law Schools way back in 1986. And then she applied to work at Harvard Law School, where she checked the box next to Native American, a job that would eventually pay her $430,000 a year based on a lie. The truth is, Elizabeth Warren built an entire career based on that lie. But today, she sat there, lips pursed, and had the temerity to question Pete Hegseth's character. You want to know who Elizabeth Warren really is? In 1984, 40 years ago, that's how long this grift's been going on. In 1984, Elizabeth Warren wrote a recipe for a cookbook called Pow Wow Chow, a collection of recipes from families of the 5 civilized tribes, where Elizabeth Warren volunteered her recipe for Mexican oatmeal soup. And right next to her name, she wrote Cherokee. Elizabeth Warren, Cherokee. And little Lizzie made it all the way to the Senate after that, based on that lie. And with 6 weeks to prepare, this was Pow Wow Chow's best question for Pete Hegseth today. Take a look.
The question I have for you on this is, will you put your money where your mouth is and agree that when you leave this job, you will not work for the defense industry for 10 years?
It is really sad when you think about the decay of that party. And just out of curiosity, did anyone think to maybe let the fake Indian know that our current defense secretary, Lloyd Austin, was literally on the board at Raytheon when he was nominated to be Secretary of Defense 4 years ago? Do these people hear themselves speak? Did anyone on little Lizzie's staff think that, hey, when Lloyd Austin retired from the military, he did exactly what she's about to ask Pete Hegseth about? After that, we heard from Richard Blumenthal. That's my senator in the state of Connecticut. I'm very proud. Think about this for a moment. Richard Blumenthal has spent his entire adult life lying about serving in Vietnam. But according to his newspaper, the New York Times, Blumenthal never served in Vietnam. And after at least 5 military deferments, he eventually served stateside in the Marine Reserves, working on, this is a quote, projects like campground repairs. Campground repairs. But somehow, according to Democrats, today Richard Blumenthal was the best person to pass judgment on Pete Hegseth's record. Take a look.
By 2010, revenue at the Veterans for Freedom had dropped to about $265,000. In the next year, it had dropped further to $22,000. You don't dispute these numbers, do you?
Polymarket again has Pete today at 88%. That number will probably go up between now and Monday when the Senate votes on his confirmation.
Rob Finnerty is the host of Finnerty, weeknights 8 o'clock Eastern. Check it out tonight because it is bound to be just as good as last night after Democrats questioned Pam Bondi today. Also happening in Washington today, the battle over access to internet pornography in the Supreme Court. This is over a new law in Texas that would require visitors to pornographic websites to undergo some kind of age verification process to prove that they are actually 18 or older. Critics claim that it would violate the First Amendment. And the House has passed a ban on men competing in women's sports from all federally funded schools, 218 to 206. 2 Democrats did vote for it. 206 voted to keep letting men compete as women. And the SEC, Securities and Exchange Commission, announcing that it's suing Elon Musk now. Now they're suing him for his acquisition of Twitter, days before Trump's new SEC chair, Paul Atkins, takes over for Gary Gensler. But the Biden administration is absolutely not playing any political games or weaponizing the government. By the way, Wall Street is on fire today. Speaking of the SEC, the Dow Industrials opened higher by more than 500 points. The NASDAQ was up more than 300. About time, because after the last 2 weeks, we really needed it, which means I really needed it. Outside of Washington, all eyes are on the Middle East, where a ceasefire appears to be imminent, and the ceasefire would allow for the release of nearly 100 hostages living and those that are dead, including several Americans. More than 46,000 people have been killed since Hamas started the war on Israel more than 15 months ago. 46,000 people. Yes, Hamas, a terror organization backed by Iran, started the war. Don't forget that. With their attack on Israel back on October 7th at that concert. This is former IDF spokesperson Jonathan Conricus, who you've seen on Newsmax many a times, with Bianca De La Garza.
Pleased to bring in tonight former IDF spokesperson and the senior fellow at the Foundation of Defense of Democracies, Jonathan Conricus. Sir, thank you for being with us tonight. There's so much to get into.
Thank you for having me, Bianca.
President-elect Donald Trump appeared here on Newsmax with our own Rob Schmidt. Play a little bit of what he said about this potential hostage deal.
We are very close to getting it done. And they have to get it done. If they don't get it done, there's going to be a lot of trouble out there, a lot of trouble like they have never seen before. And they will get it done. And I understand there's been a handshake and they're getting it finished, and maybe by the end of the week. But it has to take place.
Okay, how much does Donald Trump's comments about all hell breaking loose play into this calculus here with Iran and this deal, in your expert opinion?
Well, in my opinion, it matters a lot. And I think, if we look at the details, this deal is essentially, with perhaps some details a little bit different, but this deal is essentially what has been on the table for months and has been rejected so far by Hamas, already approved by Israel many times, including by the Prime Minister. And Hamas has not yet approved it this time either, but there appears to be a positive momentum. I assess that really the weight of incoming President Trump has been applied on Qatar and perhaps on Egypt, which are the two state supporters of Hamas. And that is perhaps what has injected the whole process with a bit more momentum. And that is why we perhaps can be a little bit more hopeful as to what's happening.
Certainly.
I think that all of the parties are careful not to be in the wrong side of the books of incoming President Trump. And I think Israel understands that this is going to be a long, long war here with Hamas. This will only be a milestone. Returning the hostages will be one stage, but unfortunately, as long as Hamas governs Gaza, then there will be war and despair and fighting and misery. Until Israel defeats Hamas and eradicates it. Yeah.
Let's talk about that. The deal's been on the table for months, and you say, yes, the calculus is Donald Trump. This is now possibly going to happen now, and possibly before he takes office. So what should be the governing force? What would it look like then? Who should be in control of Gaza? And how do you actually handle that obstacle you just said, which is Hamas maintaining control and still having, that territory?
So unfortunately, I can only say what the bad options are, which I think shouldn't be on the table. Hamas, supported by UNRWA, shouldn't be an option. The Palestinian Authority, which is corrupt, despised by Palestinians, and almost incapable of governing in Judea and Samaria, or what some people call the West Bank, isn't a good option either. What I think will actually happen is for an interim stage of Israeli control over the Gaza Strip, and then to hand over the Gaza Strip to local Palestinian leadership, which hopefully will be able to grow with American help, Arab help, and to build that kind of a fresh and new take on leadership in Gaza, one that doesn't focus on annihilating Israel or waging jihad and holy war against Israel, but instead focuses on the future of Gaza, the future of Gazan children, in having a functioning society, in infrastructure and services and schools and education. When that happens, then I think that will be, a positive and a hopeful thing. But to be realistic, and I live in this area, and my children will serve in the military, so I'm not.
Yes.
This isn't an academic exercise for me. I think that will take a long time before we see that happening.
So that is the former spokesperson of the Israeli Defense Forces, Jonathan Conricus. If you know anything at all about the history of Israel and Palestine, Israelis and Palestinians and Gaza, you know that is a big ask and big expectations. But we can and should all be hopeful. So news from the Middle East could break out at any moment, and there will be plenty of fireworks throughout the day on Capitol Hill. Make sure you keep it on Newsmax, Newsmax 2, and Newsmax.com throughout the day and night for all of the news and breaking developments. It all begins each and every day with Wake Up America, National Report, Bianca De La Garza on Newsline, Carl Higbie on Frontline, American Agenda, Greta Van Susteren, Rob Schmidt tonight, Finnerty, Greg Kelly, The Right Squad, and much, much more. I'm Tony Marino. This is the Newsmax Daily. Thank you, as always, for listening. Continue to share it with your friends and family, and make sure you subscribe on whatever podcast platform you're listening to. Enjoy the rest of your day. If you wear a hat, to cover up your bald spot, you have a good excuse to wear a hat today, National Hat Day. Maybe eat a bagel, and keep on fighting the good fight.
News breaks every minute, every day. You need the app, the Newsmax app. Find it free on your smartphone store. Then watch us anytime, anywhere.
Relentlessly slowing the spread of the stupid every day. It's the Rob Carson Show.
Hey, it's Rob Carson. My podcast is about leading-edge commentary and opinion, great guests, and the biggest political comedy in the country. My satire was featured on the Rush Limbaugh program for over a decade, and now it's fresh and new and on my podcast. It's not just another desk-pounding conservative tirade. It's about entertaining, informing, and motivating. Patriotism and hope. You don't need more stress in your life. You need to feel good and, dare I say, even laugh. Subscribe and download at your favorite podcast platform or go to newsmax.com/listen.
Information. Truth is freedom. Is Newsmax. It's real news for real people.